When I started, there was a man named Earl Nightingale who had a record, this is back many years ago, called The Strangest Secret, which we listened to and wore out. And then J. Douglas Edwards, who actually had a title of the father of American selling. And then Norman Vincent Peale, he was one of my favorite authors and one of my mentors. And I would literally go anywhere I could once a year to sit at the feet of these gentlemen and have them literally go, and some of them I went to 8, 9, 10 times, because I think repetition is the mother of learning, and I think you've got to always go back to basics, and that's what I did. Once a year I would spend normally from December 26th to January 1, and I'm going to suggest anybody watching this that they consider getting in their home this reference library where they can put all their educational materials. And it's invaluable to have a place. And even when I just had a little one-bedroom, $75 a month apartment, I had a drawer and a dresser that I called my reference library. And if anyone now watching us were to talk to someone who had a $2 to $5 million property, they would say to them, there's one room I have to have if we build this $1 million home, and that's a library. And so all of us, regardless if we're in a little apartment or in a mansion, we have to have a place for educational material, books, CDs, DVDs, things where we can take out every year, go back to basics, fundamentals, and renew our enthusiasm and excitement for our lives in the field of sales, marketing, and more important, communicating with others.
Agreed. And I remember when I started with the insurance company, that my very first professional sales job, part of the first quarter of our training, first few months, was getting into different sales tapes. So they had the Brian Tracy, for example, the Tom Hopkins, the Zig Ziglar, the Earl Nightingale. I mean, you name it. Somebody had some of those tapes somewhere.
Right.
And this was, tapes, CDs, whatever it is. The bottom line is I just became a junkie of listening to those every single night when I would go home. I became so intrigued and so enthralled with this message of you can be better, you can have more success, you can learn from others, like you were talking about, and that reference library just became bigger and bigger and bigger.
Me too.
So that every time I got in my car, I felt like I was in a university, like you talk about, the car in the class becoming a classroom.
Exactly.
And constantly going back to that material. Even today, I still have those tapes. I still have those CDs because they were so important in the beginning of my career that I wanted to hold on to them as a remembrance of that.
Definitely. And I as I mentioned to you, back to basics once a year is what all great athletes do. And of course, spring training.
That's right.
And here are multi-million-dollar earning athletes that, go out, hit the pads or run, jump, do whatever they do to make a living in that sport, but they start off with the fundamentals. Vince Lombardi, the great football coach of the Green Bay Packers that had 4 national championships. Here were the best football players in the world. And he'd walk in first day of the season when they'd all be in the locker room, and he'd walk in and he'd reach down and he'd pick up a football and he'd say, "Gentlemen, this is a football." Talk about back to basics.
That's a great example.
Yeah, really.